Welcome to the Flex Rental Solutions webinar. Today we're going to be talking about custom reports, and specifically we're going to be talking about how you can design your own custom reports. Basically what we want to do today is cover how you can download existing reports, or what we call embedded reports, and then how you can edit those in an iReport or the Jaspersoft Studio Designer, and then re-uploading those into your system so that you can use your custom reports. One thing that I want to mention before we start here is I just want to make this very clear that this webinar is really just being presented as a service to you as customers. This is outside of our normal scope of support. So if you are having issues with a custom report that you're trying to design, we aren't necessarily going to support it through our normal support at flexrentalsolutions.com email. You can send in a request there, but we'll probably just send back a response that says we can either help you for $120 an hour, which is the going rate for the report designer that we use, or we can help you finish your report at that same rate. But yes, we are basically just providing this webinar as a service to you so that you can kind of get off on the right foot. But this is outside of our normal support. Also, we would just want to mention that if you do just want to go the route of using us to design your custom reports, usually we just ask that you take an existing report. A lot of times that's the basis for the custom report that you're going to design. So for example, if you want to see what we have available built into the system, you could just go to Project Elements on the Projects menu, and then we're probably just going to primarily deal with quote reports today, but this could be for equipment lists or invoice or whatever, but quotes are usually a good place to start. Go to the Reports tab, and you'll notice that anything listed in the instance level reports you can enable to be a report that is able to be printed from a quote. And so you would just check any of the reports that you want to be able to print, click Update, and then when you open a quote, you'll notice that those reports are available to you to print from that quote. And so that's kind of the starting point that most people will start with. They'll find any number or any one of these existing quotes, and then come up with a few ideas of how they want it to look. Maybe they want to remove some things, add some other things, or move some things. And we definitely still do that. Like I said, the rate is $120 an hour. So usually we'll just send in a request to support at flexrentalsolutions.com, do a mock-up of what you want the report to look like, and then we send that off to a subcontracted designer, report designer, who will give us a level of effort. Sometimes a report might take as little as 2 hours. Sometimes a report might take 8 to 10 hours. But once we get that level of effort, then we'll send you a quote detailing how much it would cost for us to design that report for you. And this is also a good time to mention that you might be thinking, well, why are we showing you how to do this yourself if this is something that we charge for? And the point is that we really don't make money off of these custom report requests. We offer that to you as a service because we know that it's something that a lot of customers want. And the amount that we charge to do custom reporting is really just the amount that it costs us to subcontract that work to the report designer that we use. So we're really not making any money off of it. And so by showing you how to do it yourself, it's really more of a benefit to us because it kind of takes a little bit off of our plate, and it can help you as well because that way you'll be able to design your own custom reports and not have to incur that $120 an hour cost. So it's kind of a win-win for both you and us. So let's get started. A couple of the things that you'll want to do before we even do anything here in Flex is to download the report designer that you're going to use. In the past, we've used the iReport designer from Jaspersoft. You'll notice though, especially if we go here to this link, there's a note that tells us that Jaspersoft is no longer supporting iReport, and they are now using Jaspersoft Studio as the official design client for Jasper reports. So some of you might already be using iReport, and that's fine. I'm not 100% sure what this might mean in the future if we're using an old version of iReports, because they will not update past version 5.5. I think they just said they're only going to continue to fix critical bugs and things like that. So I'm not exactly sure if there will be some sort of disconnect between the version that's running here and any sort of version of whatever's running on Flex. But for now, I do believe iReport Designer still works, but I'm going to recommend to anybody who's just starting to search for the Jaspersoft Studio. And you could just do a Google search, and you'll find on Jaspersoft's official page. And I do believe if you want to download this, you will have to go through and create an account, jump through a couple of hoops there. It's not a big deal. It's all free, so it's not going to cost you anything. But just keep in mind that I think you do have to create an account if you want to download Jaspersoft Studio. I've already downloaded that on my computer here, and you can see I have that open. And then we will get to this in just a few minutes after we show how you can actually download the existing reports in Flex. So we're going to go to the System Settings menu in Flex, and we're going to look at Embedded Reports. And like I mentioned earlier, embedded reports are just all of the existing reports that are hard-coded into Flex. Most of these came from custom report requests that we've received in the past. So Flex has been around for about 5 years, and a big part of how Flex was built, and especially these reports, were custom requests that we got from customers. So maybe a customer said, I want a quote that shows this, doesn't show this, and looks like this, and has a header that looks like this, and so maybe we design quote with pricing look A. And then another customer wanted a slightly different look, so we designed quote with pricing look B, and then just started offering those reports, or at least a variation of those reports, to all customers. And so that's what you see under the Embedded Reports section. To download one of these existing reports, you simply will just click the Download button over here. So let's deal with the quote with pricing look B. In fact, before we even get to that, I just want to show what it currently looks like. Because again, this is usually the first step in the process, is to first enable that report. And if you got in it a little bit late to the webinar, you would just go to Projects, Project Elements, and then open the element that you're dealing with. We're dealing with a quote right now. And then on the Reports tab is where you will enable any report that you want to be able to print from that element. So we've already done that with our quote. Now we can come over here and print anything that we've enabled. So let's print quote with pricing look B, just so we can kind of see what it looks like. As you can see, I've enabled a couple of report groups here. If you want to learn more about that, we have a great webinar on our YouTube page about report groups, but we're not going to talk about that right now. So I'm just going to set those options to none and generate the report as is. And so here's that report. It's pretty simple. You'll see item description with the general fields that show up on the quote, but there are a few differences in the header and things like that. So it doesn't look exactly like your default financial document. There's a few changes that were made, and so that's what quote with pricing look B looks like. So what we want to do, again, is go back to System Settings, Embedded Reports, and then we're going to find quote with pricing look B, then click Download. And so this downloaded a JRXML file, and that's just XML is just a programming language that we use to design these reports. And so what we'll do at this point is open our Jaspersoft Studio, and then open the file that we just downloaded. So it was financials quote with pricing look B, and then open. Now, if you're familiar with any of these types of programs like Adobe Dreamweaver, something like that, where you are designing a web page, then you'll know that you have the design page, you have the source, which is the code that goes behind it, and then kind of a preview split screen and kind of thing. I'm not sure why I got an error when I went to the preview, but that's fine. We're not going to be using that view anyway, so we're primarily going to be dealing with the design page. And of course, you could change your zoom so that you could get in a little bit closer to fine-tune some of your designs. But basically, the way that this is laid out is that all of the fields that you saw on that quote with pricing look B, and let's jump back and look at that actual PDF for a second. So let's start with the very top. We have the logo, we have the name of the element, and then we have the quote name with the quote number. And so let's see what that looks like in the designer. Right here we have the logo. And if you come over and look around the properties and the different fields that we have here, you'll be able to see the actual codes and tokens and things like that that are being used to build the report. Keep in mind that we aren't really going to be we're not really going to be covering any of this in this particular webinar. That will be in part 2. We really just want to cover some of the basics, just doing some basic design changes in this part 1 and then re-uploading into your system. So if you are interested in a lot of these data producer items, and if you want to pull a certain token or a certain thing to put on your report that isn't currently on the report, we'll talk more about that in part 2, which we're hoping to present next week, if not 2 weeks from now. But I at least just wanted you to show, or I just wanted to show you how the report is built and how we have these different codes and tokens that go into pulling the information. So just like in the report, we have number caption, which is quote number, that's the caption, and then the actual quote number. So the codes are number caption and number. Now, if you feel like you're a little bit more advanced and want to be able to start messing around with some of this, you certainly can. If you want to move ahead, there are some really good topics on our forum. If you haven't been there, it's just forum.flexrentalsolutions.com. And again, to log in, you're not using your Flex username and password. This is a completely separate username and password that you'll have to register with. But if you look at the reports section, there are quite a few, and I don't know exactly where they are. You'll just kind of have to dig into some of them. Like here we have Jaspersoft Studio Expression for venue name, and it looks like there are a few replies there. And so a lot of our users are already pretty advanced with designing their own custom reports, and they're sharing a lot of that information on the forum. So that's a great place for you to start if you want to kind of get ahead, a little bit ahead before part 2 of this webinar. So I definitely recommend checking that out. For now, though, let's kind of finish talking about the different data producer fields and tokens, and really just get into how we can make some basic changes to this particular report. So let's go back to the actual PDF copy, and let's just make a couple of quick decisions here of what we might want to change. So if you're a little bit more, design-centered and you want things to line up a little bit more, this is maybe something that you would want to move closer up into the corner instead of kind of floating right here. So let's look at how we can do that. We'll go back to the designer, and you'll notice that the fields are all outlined here, so you can kind of see where they're going to be placed. And these particular fields are kind of away from the margin. And so if you want to be able to move those, it's just a simple matter of selecting the field and then dragging it or using the arrow keys to move it. In fact, you can even select multiple items at once. Notice that if you're not selecting anything, then you can just use the Select All tool. So I could select several fields at once, And then I'm just going to move that over. And maybe let's move it up too so that it kind of falls into that margin grid right there. So it lines up a little bit better with what we have over here. And this maybe shows up a little bit closer to the top instead of floating down here a little bit. Let's go back to the report and look at the header options here. Now there aren't many header options in this particular report. Some of the other reports that you might download, the embedded reports, might have a much bigger header. Sometimes the header options appear in a single column over in the side here. So this one doesn't have many in the first place, but let's just say that we want to remove a few of them. Maybe we only want quote number. In fact, quote number is already up here. Same with the quote name. So maybe those are a couple things that we could remove from this report. Or maybe you want to remove them from up here and only have them appear in the header. In fact, let's do that. So we'll remove the quote name and quote number from here so that it only appears right there in the header. We'll go back to our Jaspersoft Studio, select the fields that we want to remove, and I'm just hitting delete. And now you'll probably notice that there's going to be quite a bit of white space all around here. So maybe what we want to do is select everything in the header right here. And again, we'll just use the select all. And what we can do is actually start moving those things up. And it looks like I didn't select everything. So let's try again and try to select. There we go. So now I have all the different fields and the line, and at this point I could grab that and move it up. And then at the same time we kind of have a little bit of space between the header and the listing of items now. So maybe we could do the same thing, select everything. It looks like I got everything there. And bump that up a little bit too. Now a lot of times you'll want to be careful doing this. You'll notice that when I bump that up, I kind of accidentally went over the margin grid here. So in fact, let me do an undo and try that again to keep it nice and even. In fact, I'm just going to use my arrow keys this time so I'm not accidentally bumping it to the side. So I'm just using my up arrow to move all of these fields up a little bit more, just so there's a little bit less white space after the header. And now the way that the report will work is even though I only have one line here for the description, and if you noticed on the actual report, I only had one line as well. But if I have multiple lines, then the report knows to list those multiple lines. We also see the notes are down here. That's probably a good place for the notes to be, so we could just leave that there. And in fact, we probably have done enough basic editing. I'm sure you could imagine some of the other things you could do if you want to remove some of the total block options. Maybe you want to remove page number stuff. And again, if you're a little bit more ambitious and you want to add things that aren't already existing on this report, then you can come over and look at these different tokens and things like that and see if there's anything that you can add. That gets a little bit more tricky, and like I said, we will cover that more in part 2, but you can certainly go to our forum and find some more information on that. And if you are interested in receiving some specialized training from Flex, like I said, our custom report training is $120 per hour. And so you're more than welcome to take advantage of that as well. So the next step that we want to take here is taking the source code and then uploading it back into our Flex system. So we'll click on the Source tab. I'm going to select all. I'm on a Mac, so that's just Command A. And then I'm going to copy, so I do a Command C or right-click and copy. And I'm copying the entire source code field. And as you can see, that's quite a bit. So I have that copied on my clipboard. I'm going to go back to Flex, go to System Settings, then click Custom Reports. Then click New Custom Report. And then here's where I will give it its name and all of the different settings. And then this is where I will paste the source code. So let's just say that this is quote with pricing B custom. And you can call it whatever you want. You don't have to keep the name of the last one or anything like that. I just wanted to give it a simple name so that we know exactly what we're dealing with. We'll click Show Hide Source and then just paste the source. It's going to look a little bit messy, but that's okay. Flex will be able to read it just fine. On valid extensions, since we are using this as a financial document report, I'm just going to click Financial Document. If you're designing something custom for an equipment list, like a pull sheet or manifest, then you could enable it for equipment lists. And then there's some other options too, but I would say 90% of the time or 95% of the time it's just going to be financial document or equipment list. You can also enable authorized groups. This is just like in report preferences, where if I choose a group, then only that group or members of that group will be able to run this report. If I leave them unchecked, that means anybody from any group will be able to run this report. And then I can also choose default formats and sizes. So I'll say this is default PDF. It's a US letter, and it's always going to print in portrait. I don't have to check anything on these, but sometimes it's nice to just put those defaults in there. Click Create, and I now have a custom report that's listed in my custom reports. The last step of this process now is to be able to enable this report to be used. So again, just like we showed earlier, we're going to go to the Projects menu, click Project Elements. We'll go to our quote. And on the Reports tab, we should now see that custom report that we uploaded. Quote with pricing B custom. If you already had your quote project element settings open, then you might have to close it and reopen it to be able to see the new uploaded custom report for you to check. So if you don't see it, then just close that tab and reopen it. But we'll check it, click Update. And now if we open a quote, or if you already have a quote open, just reload the quote, and we'll be able to see that new custom report that we just enabled in the Reports section. So let's click Quote with Pricing Look B, generate the report, and there's the report with the changes that I made. So remember, I moved quote up a little bit. I took away the name and the number from the header because that's, or from the top header because that's already here in this header information. And then I moved everything up a little bit. And it looks like I could probably still do a little bit more work to move this up a little bit higher as well, just so it appears right after the line instead of having a blank line. And then probably could do a little bit more work in moving this total block up as well. But that is the very basics of how you can download an existing report. And again, that was on System Settings, Embedded Reports, and then you just download whichever report you want to do customization to. Opening that in your Jaspersoft Studio or iReport, if that's what you're using. Making the design changes, copying the source code, and then going to your System Settings and Custom Reports, creating a new custom report and entering all that information and dumping the source code into the source section here. And of course, just like we showed, you'll want to go to your project element settings and the reports tab for whatever element you're dealing with and enable that new custom report so that you can print it. Now, again, I just want to stress that if you do start going down this road and you decide to do some custom reports on your own, this does not necessarily fall into our normal support scope. So if you do have any questions or need help, we typically recommend first going to our user forum, just at forum.flexrentalsolutions.com, and seeing if you can get some help from other Flex users who have been doing their own custom reports. You can email support@flexrentalsolutions.com, but we probably will likely just refer you to our custom report training, which once again is $120 per hour. And a lot of times too, if you start trying to design a custom report on your own and you just can't really figure out how to do it, a lot of times we will just ask if you want us to complete that for you. And again, just like the training, the custom report rate is $120 an hour. So if you're interested in going that route and you can't seem to figure out how to finish your custom report and just want us to do it, then we could certainly pick that up for you. So this, again, was just part one. Part two, we will focus a little bit more on the designer, going through and using some of these different tokens, how you can connect to the data producer and see all of the different available tokens that you can use on the reports. So we will definitely get into that a little bit later in part two. Hopefully we will get to that in our next week's webinar. If not, then definitely 2 weeks from now. So again, if you do have any questions about this, definitely go to our forum. Lots of great users in our forum who have already been doing this for some time now and have some really great advice. If you need some help and want to request some specialized training or just have us finish your report, then email support@flexrentalsolutions.com.